All right, Renowned fam, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Morris, and as always, I am so excited for y'all to be here. And today, I have the most amazing bonus podcast for y'all. It's Mr. Pete Sena, and let me tell you, he is an entrepreneurial genius / legend. This dude brings the hammer. He brings some knowledge, some wisdom, and man, it's super powerful. So I can't wait for y'all to get into it. So without further ado, here we go. All right, my renowned friends, I am so happy to be back. And today I have an amazing, brilliant guest with me, Mr. Pete Sena, who is a entrepreneurial genius. Can I call you an entrepreneurial genius? Does that shoe fit?
I am humbled, and I'm never going to say no to somebody calling me a genius, but that's it's a good thing I hear on a Wednesday. So
yeah, I mean, it's a good thing for me. It's a good thing to hear any day. But hey, man, so thanks for joining us today, and I'm really excited to have you here. So real quick, go ahead and give us a real quick rundown of who you are and what you've done.
yeah, for sure. So my name's Pete Sena. I always like to do the why you should listen to me thing. So just to keep it simple. So I'm a creative entrepreneur. I've been building businesses since I was in my college dorm room. And, I worked at a big corporation while in school, and then managed to turn that into what became a digital agency, built up a digital agency. It was a national group, took that up to an 8-figure business. And then from there, started doing a lot of angel investing, still do a lot of angel investing, and just continue to build businesses. So I think why people should want to listen to me is that I'm going to give them a no bullshit version of my background. I'd say my superpower is branding and marketing, specifically, how do you tell the right story and build a strategy to win customers and continue to get them over time. So I've worked across a number of different categories over the years, everything from consumer electronics to CPG to software as a service. I've seen B2B, B2C, B2B, and I'm just a huge nerd. And I think right now, one of the things, I know this episode probably launched in a couple months from now, but one of the things I'm really big into is how do we start to think about AI and technology as a way to change the way that we work? And I'm just really jazzed about that. As a technologist, it's really reignited the young geek in me. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And I wish, well, not really wish. While you were in college, I was in the military, and I wouldn't change my background for anything.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Whenever I think about it, though, it's like, man, I wish I would have started this when I was much younger, like this whole entrepreneurial dream, which I never had until I got out of the military. But you started in college, man. Like,
I did.
Was it on purpose? Did you intentionally start a business in college?
So the short version is no, I didn't. So basically, the reason I started a business was the thing that I wanted to do was not available. And like most businesses, either there's, they always say, accept what you can't change and change what you can't accept, right? So I couldn't accept the fact that people wanted me to just be a designer or just be a coder. And I just didn't accept that. I was like, I want to be both. Nowadays, it's very popular to be both. But back then when I was doing this, we're talking 2004, it was pretty rare. So ultimately that led to me basically deciding that I didn't want to do the traditional 9-to-5 and live somebody else's dream. I wanted to live my own dream. I didn't see an opportunity to go and do that. So I went and started my own thing. And that's ultimately what got me to where I'm at today.
I think that's incredible because for me, starting my own company was probably the scariest thing I've ever done. And it may have been different,
isn't it?
Yeah. I was going to say it might have been different for you because you didn't realize you were doing it at the time.
Exactly.
But I still think, like, once you realized what you had going on, you're like, oh crap. When did that sink in? Like, you actually had the start of what ended up ultimately being an 8-figure business.
Yeah. So when you say when did it kick in terms of like when did I feel the fear, or when did
you realize what you had done?
It's a great question. I don't know if I don't know if I even to this day realize what I've done, to be honest. they say that the windshield in the car is much bigger than in the rear view mirror, because they want to be looking ahead, not in the rear view. Right. So that's kind of for me, but I think that the sort of what I like to call is the oh shit moment. The oh shit moment that happened for me was when I was looking at the accounting at the time. I was in the weeds on everything, just starting a business. And there was a bunch of people who had left their jobs. Some of them had kids and they came to work for me. And I was just a young guy at the time. And it hit me because I'm like, these people, their livelihood, their children's, healthcare and life resides on me. And at the time, that was in the early days. So I didn't yet have a co-founder. It was just me. But that's where it got real fast. And I think that I learned that this wasn't just a hobby anymore. This was like a real business, and this needed to work. And it was like do or die, like, let's go. And that was the moment that it happened. I'll be honest, still to this day, I very much have imposter syndrome. I still see myself as like the skinny, scrawny 19-year-old kid that started a business. And, so when I look back, people tell me, oh, you've done this or you've done that. And I'm just always focused on like, what's next? What's the thing in front of me, not the thing behind me. And now, like, as a father, as a husband, as an employer, an entrepreneur, there's a lot of people that rely on me. Right. And I think that thinking about that too much is like kind of paralyzing, to be totally honest with you. So I think just for me, really focusing on what's next and what's that strategic vision in my head, what's that North Star, and just staying eye on the prize. That's the only thing I know how to do, because when I stop to reflect on what I have done or haven't done, then I start going into comparison mode and I'm comparing myself to this one or that one or whatever. And that's when the crisis kicks in, and that's where the anxiety, the ADHD kicks in and all that. And I'm just like, that's just a little bit crippling. So I'm not trying to do that.
Man, that's this is a great point. Sorry, I didn't mean to trigger you there. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, dude, all good, bro. I'm not going to stand up and walk away.
That's awesome. So one of my big things is, so I started my company just kind of like you, just I wasn't down. Like, military life is completely different than civilian life. And so when I got into the civilian life, I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. Like, I can't function this way. I got to have something different. And so that's how my company got born.
Nice.
But, and I think now that I've done it, I think everyone should, at least have some sort of side hustle. Because one, you learn, dude, I learned more in the first month than I probably have in my entire life. Right. Like, it was insane.
It's real when you're the one signing the checks, isn't it?
Right. It was insane. And when you're getting cease and assist orders because you didn't understand what copyright law was, right? You learn real quick. And I'm not embarrassed about it. I don't regret it, because it's like, oh, my bad, dude. Sorry. I'll quit right now. But I learned so much. And then on top of that, it is that the drive, once you have your own thing, you have that drive to just keep, like you said, keep the eye on the prize, keep pushing forward. So what were you, let me ask it to you this way. 18-year-old me is coming to Pete because I got this dream of starting a company. What advice, what strategies are you going to give me? Give me 3 key strategies.
Sure. So the first thing I do with any situation is I always lead with curiosity and wonder. I like to lead with curiosity and wonder over judgment and everything I do. So first thing I'm doing if I'm meeting you as your 18-year-old self is I'm going to ask you, why do you want to start a business? And we could play this game if you'd like. So let's do this, right? So why do you want to start a business?
Because I want to change the world.
Okay, awesome. So what is it about the world that you want to change?
I don't like the fact that people are slaves, quote unquote, to their jobs. I don't like that they lack the leadership in their own lives to take control, be the CEO of their own life, basically.
Okay. Why do you believe that people don't have agency in this world?
I mean, look at it. Like,
Okay.
it's everywhere for you to see.
Is there any scenario that you can point to that shows me where the world looks a little bit more like the world that you'd like it to see?
Working for me,
Okay. What is it about working for you that is going to be different than working with or for someone else?
because I would empower my employees. I would
Okay.
mentor, guide, just empower you. You want to start, when my old employer found out I was starting my company, I got uh looked down on for it,
Mm.
right? Trying to better myself. That's the wrong mentality. That should be celebrated. I would celebrate those things. I would push those things, encourage those things, train those things.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that your mental model of self-employment at 18 is based on a set of leadership principles that you didn't see modeled with you or for you in other organizations you've been at. So I would probably challenge you a little bit at 18, because at 18 you probably don't have a ton of experience, and I would have went 5 whys deep with you in a similar scenario, the one that we were just having. And what I would start to do is understand really what is it that you're trying to do, and how do you see the world today? How do you see the world in the future? And how do you believe you get there? And I think what I would try to do in the most encouraging way possible is really understand and guide you down understanding yourself, not having me tell you to do this or to do that. Because ultimately, then that's not going to help you. If you did, whether you did listen or you didn't listen, then I become a barrier to where you're trying to get to, right? Because then if I'm not around to give you the advice, then I'm a barrier. Then if I give you the wrong advice, I'm a barrier. So for me, I can share perspective, right? I would want to understand what it is that you want to do. I don't think that entrepreneurship is for everyone. I really don't. I think a lot of people think they want to be an entrepreneur when really what they want is more freedom, or what they want is more mentoring, what they want is more self-development opportunities. So what I do a lot of times with people is I understand what the true why is. And there's a set of processes that I do to do that. One of them is like helping you figure out what your green zone is. So like, what's your sort of zone of genius, right? Like what's the things that you want to be that lights you up? And then what are the things that take energy from you? And because the truth of the matter is that a lot of people, especially me at 19, you know, I thought that starting a business means that I'm going to get to make cool shit for the internet all day long and get to, do design and do code and do cool stuff. But the reality is when you're running a business, it's not about focusing on the what anymore. It's about focusing on the who. It's about figuring out, okay,
Mhm.
here's the strategic vision. Here's who is going to do these key pieces. And then you become much more like a conductor in the orchestra than the best first violin or the best drummer or whatever. So I think that's where I like to do that dialogue with people, because sometimes at the end of that conversation, they decide on their own that entrepreneurship is not for them. Sometimes at the end of the conversation, they get really fired up and they're like, yeah, this is amazing. So I think that entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs that are successful, I think, have a set of principles in my mind that, going back to your first question, that I think need to be present. And these are behaviors. And in my opinion, you can't be a great entrepreneur unless you understand that it's not about you, it's about the people. It's not about you, it's about the vision and the purpose. It's about the transformation you create in the world and in other people. And then there's the principles, right? One, what happens when you get knocked on your ass, right? Obviously, you've been in the military, so you know a thing or two, but the reality is not a lot of people know how to fail. They
Mhm.
need to know how to get back up, how to keep going. I see that a lot lately with what I call the YouTubeification of America, where people see a YouTube star, they see the private jets, they see the Kim Kardashian money and that life, but they're not willing to do the work to get to where they want to get to. They think that they're going to get an easy break. And the reality is, if you look at all these people on Instagram, they've done the work to get there. They've hustled, they're grinding. Many of them have the busiest, craziest schedules. I've had the pleasure of working with and knowing some celebrities over the years, and they work hard. They're the hardest people working in show business, literally. So I think to that end, I want to understand the big why. And I think the principles of, do you have high EQ? Are you emotionally intelligent? Do you have high AQ, an adversity quotient? Are you able to get knocked down and get back up? Do you have a sense of leadership, both in how you lead yourself and how you lead others? And I think if you don't have those principles, EQ, IQ, and a core vision, I think that is most likely going to be a strong predictor for failure and a lack of success, but more importantly, lack of success in the sense of joy and fulfillment. I think that a lot of people think that they want to be entrepreneurs, but what they realize is they just want control and agency over their life. I think what's beautiful about today is you can have control and agency in your life without having to own a business. So that's probably what I would do, is ask a lot of questions to help you get to, ultimately what was right for you. And it sounds like you find what's right for you, but not everybody does. So that's probably where I would start. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that is really helpful. I would challenge you though, because to me, and I think it's just a difference in definition of what entrepreneurship is.
Mhm.
And you kind of hit on it at the very end of what you were saying, and that is entrepreneurship to me is nothing more than control over your life. It doesn't necessarily mean you own your own business. It could mean you have, a main career that you love and then some side hustle. Who knows?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, so I don't want to nuance, right? Because I think it's like I'm not Webster, right? So I'm not the dictionary, but I think that when I think about entrepreneur, right? Like let's just do this as an exercise, right? Like, because I'm really curious to see if I was Webster, right? Entrepreneur, a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. So again, that's just the first thing that came up. That's Oxford, not Webster. But like for me, I think that having agency over one's life, having a sense of boundaries on how you live your life and where your time goes, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to do that, right? I hear the term that I see get used a lot these days is called solopreneur, right? Which is, I have a lot of friends who are solopreneurs, and some of them are very successful. Some of them, make $1 million a year, in terms of what they put in their pocket or more. And they're, one person businesses with typically some contractors or vendors, or maybe if they're a creator, they can maybe make a little bit more than that in some cases, but I wouldn't define those as entrepreneurs, right? Just in the truest sort of French definition of it, right?
Fair enough.
But I think what I like about this dialogue with you in this conversation, well, I like a lot about it, but one thing I like specifically is that you talk about the juxtaposition between being in the military and being a civilian. If you had to define for me the core differences, because I wasn't in the military, and I'm sure a lot of people on your audience were probably not as well. What's the core definition or juxtaposition between being in the military and being a civilian?
Purpose.
Understood. So really what I'm hearing is when you're in the military, there's a sense of what you're fighting for. You're fighting for your country, you're fighting for your people around you. Is that fair? That purpose?
More of the people to your left and right, more of
Hmm.
mission. All good soldiers, I think, have a sense of right and wrong,
Hmm.
and we're doing our best to help people and right the wrongs in their, like Iraq, Afghanistan wars. You can say what you want politically about it. Um, I may agree or disagree. I'm not a fan of either war. I think both wars needed to be fought. However, staying in Iraq for 14 years and Afghanistan for 20 years is idiotic. We could have been done in 2 years on each, maximum.
Wow.
So, I mean, um, but with that being said, in my time spent there, I would like to think I helped more than I hurt.
Understood.
And I developed friends that I still talk to on Facebook and text today in Iraq and Afghanistan both. And so that is our purpose.
I love that. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And again, I appreciate the service as well. I asked that question because I think that the other day I was in a meeting. So I haven't had a boss in over 20 years.
Mhm.
Right. And as in the meeting the other day with an entrepreneur, I was interviewing them for my podcast, Forward Obsessed. And I had this moment, and I just said to the guy, I could see myself working for you. Just the way he exuded calm, clarity,
Mhm.
measured delivery of what he was saying. I was like, wow, you could tell this guy would just be cool as a cucumber under pressure. I could see him dealing with situations, and I was like, this guy's a leader. And for me, it was the first time in a while where I was like, I could work for this guy. And I actually told him after the interview, I was like, I can never see myself working for somebody, but I can see myself working for you. And I think what he did in that meeting, he mentioned purpose. And I love that you mentioned that. what he was talking a lot about was like just being really radically clear about why are we doing what we're doing and how important everybody is in that mission, in that vision to bring that to life. And that to me, like he referred to it as psychic capital. He was saying that like a lot of people that worked on the team with him would get interviewed by other people, other companies trying to poach them, and other companies be offering him a ton of money and a ton of perks and stuff. And he one time someone asked the question like, well, why do you stay around and work at this company? And the person said, well, psychic capital. It's how I think and feel. It's how I feel going to work every single day. So I just wanted to challenge that a little bit with you, just because I think that clearly you're an entrepreneur, right? I can see that about you just from our conversation before kind of turning the red light on. But I think there's a lot of people listening to this right now that might just have a crappy boss or might just work for an organization that lacks purpose or good leadership. I don't feel like everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And I think you can have control and locus of control over your life by not being an entrepreneur. But I think that you have to be principled in your thought. And what I mean by that specifically is, again, I've been running a company for over 20 years, multiple companies actually. And in some cases, I have less control over my life than some of my friends who work at, Amazon or Netflix or Facebook, right? Because the buck stops with you when you're an entrepreneur. When there's a thing that needs to get done and there's not somebody to delegate it to, or it's time to pay the tax man or whatever it is, that buck stops with you. And sometimes that means you're going to have to miss your kid's recital, or you're going to have to miss, the thing you want to do on the weekend. And that's entrepreneurship. And I think any entrepreneur worth their muster, and I'm sure you feel that too, right? It's like the buck stops with you, but that's empowering, right? Because it's like, yeah, the buck stops with me. Like if it all goes to shit, it's my fault. If it all goes well, it's because I brought a good team together, right? I'm going to take all the blame for my mistakes, and I'm going to share the successes with the teams I bring together. So that's how I like to think about leadership. But I don't want people to feel like their only choice if they want control over their life is to go be an entrepreneur, because I think that's a fallacy. I think that's just my thoughts on it. But
so before we started recording, we were talking about oh, good grief, how did I just complete philosophy?
yeah,
And I like that you bring up fallacy, because that is a huge philosophical term
yeah,
when you're taking philosophy classes in university. That is something that you focus heavily on. And I would agree with you. So let me explain real quick why I say what I say.
yeah.
And
Please, I'm really curious.
if you look up the root word of entrepreneur, and I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it's an 18th century, 17th century French word, I believe. But the meaning of the root word is to undertake. So for me, life is all about, the purpose of life is about what missions I undertake,
Love
right?
that.
So when I say anyone can be an entrepreneur, it is, what are you doing in your life to undertake your purpose,
I love that.
right? And so that is what that's what I mean. I totally get you're speaking in more of a factual business sense,
Yeah, no, I
which
love that.
I
I'm glad that you
totally
said that
agree
too.
with.
Yeah.
I totally agree with, and I think I'm coming more from a spiritual sense
Oh, I love that.
of
And
it.
I'm so glad you said that, because at first I was like, no, I'm pretty sure an entrepreneur is, but no, I think when you describe it that way, getting to the etymology, getting to the energetic feel of being an entrepreneur, I do believe that everybody can be an entrepreneur for sure. Both spiritually, energetically, financially, emotionally. So
Right.
yeah, no, I love that. I think, I just always want to be mindful of, I never want to be the guy that sells hustle porn. I never want to be the guy that's like, go work harder. Um, that's right for me, but
I've
that's not right for
never
everybody.
heard that. I've never heard that term, hustle porn.
You've never heard
Just
that?
just just go hustle. That yeah, I've never heard that. Is that what it is? Just work harder, work
So,
harder, work harder.
so hustle porn, I think, came up a lot where you've got like the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, the Grant Cardones, these like really prolific like social media influencers, right? Like Patrick Bet David, like these are folks that built these like very illustrious big businesses, right? And then they've also built really big social profiles, and they they talk about like hard work a lot. And I think that sometimes people who are not entrepreneurs, so as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we glorify the hard work, the grit, Gary Vee calls it the dirt in the clouds, right? Like you get your feet in the dirt, I think is what he says. But I think the challenge is a lot of people, especially younger generation today, they're like very much like, oh, don't trigger me with that hustle porn kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of
so funny.
yeah. So I
love
didn't
that.
make up the term. It's one that I just always want to make sure that I represent myself well, which is like my story is my story. It's what I've done. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's like, here's what's worked for me, not worked for me. But what I never want to do is like, I never want to push something onto someone that is not right for them. And one of the things I've seen just in doing a lot of startup accelerators, where I do a lot of those kinds of things where I'll get brought in as a judge for pitch competitions or help people raise money or whatever it is I think a lot of people chase entrepreneurship on the business sense, not the philosophical sense, because they're really lost on the personal sense. And that's where I think the philosophy comes into play, is like, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth about themselves, so they run from it. And sometimes running from it means I'm going to start a business and do whatever, when really that person would be way happier if they just understood who they are. It's like that Mark Twain quote, right? The two most important days in your life: one, the day you're born; two, the day you know why. Right. So like for me, that's something I think that like self-awareness is like the number one trait that makes a great leader, in my opinion. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. But now I'm nervous because we're gonna get philosophical, and that now we're gonna get exciting. But
I mean, we don't have to if you don't want to, but
no,
I do love what you said, and it is, I think, the number one problem, and this is solely an opinion. I have no fact to back it up. But I think the number one problem is we've lost basically what you were talking about in the very beginning is why.
Yeah,
But I will say it a different way, and that is purpose.
I totally agree.
If you go out onto the street and you stop 10 people and say, what is your purpose on this planet? What is your purpose for living? They're not going to answer you. They're not going to have a clue how to answer you. But if I ask you what your purpose is, I'm sure you're going to have an answer for me. I have an answer
Instantly. Yeah.
So, just for, so, I'm not BSing. My purpose is to impact as many lives as I possibly can in the short time I have left on this planet, in any way I possibly can, for the positive. That is my sole purpose.
I'm glad that you said that, for the positive, because I was like, please don't just say impact as many lives as possible. Because I'm like, oh, so like you're Hitler, you're going to create genocide,
Right.
because that's impacting
No.
a lot of lives, right?
Right.
But
Fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah. So for the positive.
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
glad I got to watch you. You try to catch me. But yeah, I'm glad I added that. But anyway, yeah. So that's my purpose, is I want to help people. I want to help people find what I have.
Yeah, I love that.
And the most important thing I ever learned is what you talked about, and that is my why, my identity, who I am. I'm a fighter. I can get punched in the face a million times and stand back up. I don't care if I have to work 160 hours in a week. That's okay. And for the record, there's only 164. So, I mean, not a lot of time to, I'm okay with all of it.
Yeah.
I understand I'm crazy and most people aren't like me. That's okay. I don't want you to be like me. I want you to have your purpose. And
Yeah, I
if you
love
have
that.
your purpose, you have your destiny, you have your roadmap, you have your GPS to fulfill and live a happy life. All right, everybody, I just want to interrupt the podcast really, really quick and take a minute to tell you all about the brand new Renowned coaching system. This is a system I've personally designed and put a lot of thought and effort and love into. It's an amazing system. Let me tell you real quick why it's an amazing system: because you get real time analytics. You get to see exactly where you were when you started, where you currently are, and how close you are to achieving that ultimate goal that you set at the very beginning. You get analytics for everything. More importantly, the accountability with this system is the best you'll find anyplace else in the world. I get to see everything that's going on and make sure that you are staying accountable to the goals you set. It's truly powerful. You guys just got to see it for yourself. Go to renownedleadership.com, go to the top right hand corner, click book a call. You'll get to come talk to me personally, and I will personally give you a tour of this system. It is truly amazing. It's one of a kind, and it's truly, truly powerful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to show y'all. That's all I got to say about it. So let's get back to the podcast.
I love that. No, I think it's an amazing purpose. I think it's I love how crisp and clear you are on it too. And I think that it's like you're just going to be relentlessly focused on making it happen. So yeah, it's great. I mean, my purpose is I have this belief that creativity and curiosity are broken. And I think what I'm here to do, both in the circles that I show up in, the places that I represent, is like just lead people to unlock the creativity and the curiosity in themselves that they were born with, that they might have forgotten about over time. So like as a father, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, what I'm here to do is similar to you, is give people back the gift of creativity and curiosity by showing them that it exists within themselves. One of my favorite things to do with a group of people is I go around the room and I say, hey, raise your hand if you think of yourself as creative. And one of the most heartbreaking things for me is when I see someone whose hand doesn't go up and you can just see themselves judging themselves. So then I do a series of different exercises with them. Usually they're called design thinking exercises. And then I make the mental shift. And, you know, I tell a story a lot, and I'm going to talk about her. Her name's Rochelle. She was an executive assistant of mine, and she's, you know, badass. And she's worked for, you know, the Bridgewaters of the world, literally. And remember, one of the exercises was like kind of a rite of passage. I have we found one of our cards like laying around. One day I'll show it to you on the camera. But we had this rite of passage at my company DS, well, one of my companies, where we would it's on the business card. It's a sentence about you, who you are. So, you know, back in the day, obviously now we don't do as much physical stuff, but back in the day, everyone had a business card. And what you do in your first 90 days is a series of things. One of which is you'd pick what goes on your business card, not your title, which is there, but you'd pick your statement. So my statement was, I make things happen. That was my statement. And I remember she was like, can you just pick what's going to be on my card? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, you're the creative one. You just pick it. And I'm like, no. Like, hold on. And we went through an exercise. And after that, creativity was unlocked. And one of the things that I remember, and I'm glad I'm telling this story because I'm very fond of it. I remember we were talking about something, and then a couple of weeks later, I just started seeing this immense amount of creativity coming out of her and everything she was doing. And then ultimately, she went on to go start her own company, where she was doing relationship coaching and strategy. And she's just this incredible, amazing person. And such a big part of the way she does her work now is creative led. So I think the thing is, we ourselves are blockers. It's just a true story. She would laugh and tell you the story right now if she was on the pod with us here. And for me, that's just one example of a million that ties back to my purpose, which is we're all born creative. We're all born with curiosity, but then it gets beaten out of us. It gets trained out of us. It gets modeled out of us. And for me, I think that's ashamed. And I think that what I chase now in life, I try not to chase anything, but what I chase now is joy and fulfillment. And I realize for me, when I look at joy and fulfillment, whether it's my 2-year-old son, seeing the way that he gets so excited and inspired by the world, that place of wonder, it comes from a place of curiosity. When we strip away our curiosity, when we strip away our creativity because of a linear broken education system, or because of, you know, challenges that we're born into, or maybe we're brought into, you know, in some cases, maybe we end up going off to war like you have, or maybe these different things are taken from us, or we're born into a tough situation. And I recognize my place of privilege. I had a lot of privilege growing up that not a lot of people have. So I want to create that platform for folks to be able to do that. So that's my purpose, is like to unlock creativity and curiosity in people, in themselves. And really, I'm just here as a guide, right? Like I'm not this magic wizard. Like for me, it's about asking questions that unlock different unconventional responses in people. And I do that in business, right? Like as a storyteller, as a branding expert, all I'm doing is helping people tell real, authentic stories and digging them down and ripping them out of these businesses, these brands, these products that we sell, right? Like that's what I do for a living. And I think my purpose is, when I'm doing that, like it's not all rainbows and sunshine, right? Like I hate,
No.
the accounting meetings. I hate, the meetings about meetings and stuff. And there's to some degree, there's a lot of shit you do as an entrepreneur, and it, you're smiling because you know it, that we don't love to do. Right. But I'll tell you, like when I have that unlock moment with a person, whether it's one person or 100, and I've done it with both, it like that one energy unlock will help me push another 160 hours, like you said. So yeah, that's my purpose. And, I think that what I'm starting to wake up to now as I've become a dad, and as I'm starting to like see the world a little bit differently, getting a little bit older, not being the young guy in the room anymore, feeling like I'm the old guy in the room now, is like, oh man, like if I'm going to really make an impact, I've got to give people the tools, right? Back in the day, it's like I had all the answers. Now I want to be the guy that has all the questions.
Oh, I love that. That is great. That's true leadership. That right there, because I mean, the philosophy around leadership is a true leader creates a bunch of mini versions of themselves, and you do that by, like what you said, unlocking the tools that they have inside them. But I want to go back to the creativity thing, because I absolutely adore that. If you'd ask me, so my company will be a year old, September 1st. So we're coming
Congratulations.
up on our year anniversary. I'm so
Amazing.
excited. Thank you. Um, Doing great, chugging along. And when I started, I'm a firm believer in not reinventing the wheel. So I hired a bunch of coaches to help me with things, figure
Awesome.
things out. Um,
I
and
wish I did that in my first year in business. I did not, but
right.
damn, I could have used it back then.
Yeah. So, um, one of the things I said repeatedly is, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And I firmly believed I wasn't creative. Unfortunately, I didn't have you to help me unlock my creative
Well, I'm
potential.
here now.
But ultimately, what ended up happening is I had to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
I had no choice. Like it just figure it out or die, basically. Not literally die, but let your business die. It
Yeah.
was, I had to be creative.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you're a startup, because you're strapped for cash, you borrowed a ton of money, or at least I did, to
Mm-hmm.
to start this. You in the beginning, you have no income, you just have outflow, like, and you're freaking out, and you're like, "What, dear God, what did I get myself into?" You know the journey, you've seen it a million times, and it was like, I have to be creative. I just have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And now, if you ask me, "Uh, am I as creative as you in my own right?" I would say yes. Can
Yeah.
you make way cooler designs than me? Probably can. But when it comes to strategic planning, like that, and that's what I learned. I've been creative my entire life, because in
Yeah.
the military, strategic planning was very much what I did.
Amen.
That is very creative.
Yeah.
Like when you're getting shot at, you're being creative as hell, because you're having to figure out how to maneuver and
Yeah.
not get dead. And
Well,
so, I mean,
labels limit us though, right? Like it's funny to hear you say that, because your mental model on creativity, you're like, hey, you can probably design cooler stuff than me, right? Your mental model on creativity, typically when people hear the word creative, they think of art, or they think of
art,
music, or
mhm,
they think of, something visual, which is a natural tendency. I hear that a lot. Whereas, what you described, strategic planning, is all about problem solving, right? It's
mhm,
about what strategy is realizing that there's an unlimited amount of things we can do, but there's a finite amount of things we can do, right? Or and should do and will do, right? So
that
I
will
think that
work.
that work exactly. So I think that's strategy, right, in the most simple form. So I think that people a lot of times will label themselves, and that label. So I always say it's not about or, it's about and, right? That's a big principle of
Mhm.
mine in life, is don't make it about or, make it about and. And I think that creativity notion is like, well, what does creativity mean to you? And like what I do with a lot of people is I'll ask, okay, if someone says, no, I don't think I'm creative, typically I'll make them prove to themselves that they are. And I don't do that like a Tony Robbins would, right? I do that by basically saying, okay, well, tell me about yourself. Like sometimes I hear someone's like really into cooking or baking or gardening or fishing or whatever it is. And it's like, well, you know, what's the difference between me and you going fishing right now? And it's like, well, I'm going to put the lure on this way and it's going to help me fish because this is the process I use and where I go to fish. That's hella creative, right? So for me, I think creativity is removing the labels and the limits that we put on ourselves, the limiting beliefs we put on ourselves to understand what is possible. And that's where that curiosity comes in. When you start to feel curiosity and creativity, two of which are big core values on how I live my life, that's where I think that just magic happens, right? Is we remove the constraint and now we can be creative. And that's why I think that like, it's interesting. I would say you're hella creative just from what I learned about you today in our conversation. But even at first, you almost at first described yourself as, I don't think I'm creative, but now you've embraced it. But before, all you had to do is update your definition of creative. And this is where I think that modeling is so important, right? By modeling, I mean, if you're in a system, whether it's a people, a process, a lifestyle, whatever it is, that is made you to believe that you are less than, no, these are the creative people, you're not creative. Now, all of a sudden, you're in this box where you have seen yourself as not this thing. And that's where I think that a lot of times people get stuck with creative because we are born creative. It's just taken away from us. Or if we let it. So I hope that's helpful.
No, absolutely it is. And I agree with you 100%. And it was mind blowing to me when I realized, like, holy shit, I am creative. I'm just creative. Yeah. I'm not artistic creative. I'm creative in a much different way than what I always labeled, because you're absolutely right. That is 100% how I labeled creative.
Yeah.
And so, when I look at content creators, like, and before I started this, it's like, I wish I could do that. That's really cool. Now I realize I can do that. I can't do it like they can, because I'm not, my creative genius, or not genius, but my creative space isn't the same as theirs. My creative space is more analytical and business and, strategy. So yeah, absolutely. Love that definition.
Yeah.
But time is really flying from us, and I really want to talk to you about this. So we're going to completely derail this conversation. And I really thank you for going in the weeds with me on that. I really appreciate it. It was awesome.
No, this is a fun conversation. It's so nice to not be doing the typical 10 questions on a podcast. So I was excited for this one when you reached out. So
awesome. So AI, how excited are you for AI?
I'm really excited for AI, but I'm also really terrified for AI because
why?
So again, as someone who practices creativity and curiosity in every aspect of my life, I believe that the possibilities are endless for what AI can do for us as a civilization. I believe that it can automate the mundane and leave lots of space for new form of creation, co-creation. I believe it can create opportunities to bring us closer together as a species for the way that we were designed to connect with people, which is truly to connect with people. Not connect by pushing a little heart emoji on one of these platforms on one of these things, but being able to truly connect. And I think that's what I'm excited about for AI. What I'm terrified about for AI is how I'm already seeing people lose their ability to be creative and be problem solvers. What I mean by that specifically is, in a world where these large language models can write code, explain code, and do code, in a world where they can dream up pictures based on words in our mind or thoughts we have or want, no different than when people stopped being able to use basic math skills because they relied too heavily on the calculator, or they stopped being able to answer questions or trivia at a dinner party because they always have Google in their pocket. In a world that becomes over reliant on these AI tools, I can see how the world and the systems will break down, for starters. So one, I think it can unlock or limit human potential in a big way. A good example is, I find myself now, I'm using these AI tools every single day. And when one of them goes down, which sometimes they do, an API isn't working as planned or whatever, a system is being upgraded, you see the stress that can produce on a system when they're heavily reliant on that. So that's one thing. To get more specific, I think that when we unlock AGI, or artificial general intelligence, super intelligence, I think that what will become of the world, to me, is ultimately heavily dependent on societal factors and constructs. And I think that if we're not careful, we run the risk of completely setting ourselves back into the dark ages and, really making things get really crazy pretty quickly. So I worry about that, right? A good example, I'll take it a little less technological for a second. Do you have kids?
I do.
So how old are your kids?
Oldest is 22, youngest is 15.
It's been a while since you changed diapers. So,
Yes.
so needless to say, have you ever heard of cocoa melon?
Yeah.
So cocoa melon, what's really interesting about cocoa melon is they do a lot with the jump cuts, the edits, the sound, the colors, the movement. And it basically is like fucking with the dopamine receptors in a baby's brain, right? So there's been studies that have been done now that exposing children to that type of content at an early age actually limits certain chemicals in the brain and the way that certain developmental activities happen. I believe that right now, there's never ever going to be a generation that was not born with a phone in their hand, that was not born with access to the internet, that was not born with a cell phone or a supercomputer in their pocket. So as a result of it, the reliance, the connection, the dopamine, serotonin connection that these people have to devices, I think is really powerful. So why did I share that? I shared that because in a world that is driven by algorithms, in a world that's driven by groupthink and personalized one-to-one activities that are set forth by a computer, the world can get really bleak very quickly in my mind. So I'm terrified about AI as much as I'm excited about it, because at the end of the day, we see the best and worst of humanity in every corner of the world and every corner of the internet. So I think at the end of the day, that's where I get worried about to start in the next 3 years. I worry a lot about disinformation and the ability to do psyops on people and change human behavior as a result of it, right? Doesn't matter who you want to see in the Oval Office here. Doesn't matter who you want to see in whatever. People have been put in those places as a result of the power of mind manipulation. So this is where I think that in a society where we have super intelligence that can do things in a moment's notice that a human is not capable of, I worry about what that could mean for humanity. I personally believe that if we look at cyclical economies, I'm less worried about a Skynet moment happening, to be candid. I'm not thinking like doom and gloom. I'm actually thinking that the future feels a lot more like Tony Stark Iron Man than it does, Terminator 2, in my opinion. So I'm excited as a technologist. But that being said, I do think that I worry about the misuse of technology. And I think there's a lot of pressure on the Sam Altmans of the world at OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT. And I worry a lot about these big tech companies because I think that they've got a lot of pressure and they've got a lot of challenges on their shoulders. A really good example that is one of the more popular things. You've probably seen all the images popping up on the internet, like Mid-Journey, Stable Diffusion, those kinds of things where you type in some, words, text to image comes up and it makes a picture of a cat on a piano for you. Right. So when Stable Diffusion launched their model open source, anyone could download it. And the beauty of open source is you have the community aspect and people can make it better and it's transparent and it's open. And I'm a huge believer in open source. Love that. But then immediately you had people misusing Stable Diffusion, right? So you have open, so it's philosophical, right? It's like open versus closed, like this versus that. Right. So what I worry a little bit about is our ability to continue to evolve and connect in a meaningful way. But I'm really excited as a technologist. I feel like a 19-year-old kid again, because one of the things I've been doing right now is every aspect of my life I've been automating. I automate the amount of things I've automated in the past 6 months has been incredible. I probably save 30 hours a week or more on things that a human doesn't have to do because a computer can do it.
Yeah, 100% automation is key. And I kind of feel bad sometimes because it's like, man, I feel like I'm cheating. Right. And so that's what I worry about with AI.
Yeah.
Is I feel like we're going to get dumb.
I agree with that. And what I would say is, for me, we already live in the sea of sameness. We're already a bunch of lemmings in a lot of ways. So I feel like right now differentiation is really incredibly important. And I think that that's a thing where if all of us are using the same large language models, right? Now, granted, I'm probably a better prompt engineer than most people, right? Because I've really learned how to get good things out of these models. But in a world where we're all accessing the same black box, and by that black box, I mean using Claude, which is by Anthropic, or ChatGPT, or OpenAI's models, GPT-4, 3, 3.5, whatever it is, in a world where we're all asking those computers the same question, in a world where our softwares have LLMs built into them and are responding to what they think we want and need, if we're all using the same model and we're all using the same access to it, and we all level up our ability to talk to it, then at that point, what makes it different? What's the moat? The moat, in my opinion, is then being able to have a fine-tuned model, having your own set of models. So I think we're moving to a world where it's going to be more like multimodal, where GPT-4 is already multimodal because of what it can do in terms of like image recognition model and those types of other things it can do. I think in a world we're going to have almost an unlimited amount of AIs, where there will be an AI that paints beautiful landscape pictures like the one you have behind you. There'll be an AI that's really good at fetching sports scores off the internet. You mentioned you're a big ESPN and sports fan, right? There'll be a world that's good at removing extra background noise audio from this conversation that might be in the background from our air conditioning units or from different hums and drums, right? These will be fine-tuned, specialized models that do different things. So I think in the world in the future, people, computers, devices, experiences will all call these different models. So I think if you're listening to this episode now or in the future, and you're not already knee deep in playing with these tools, you definitely need to be getting used to these tools, because an AI is not coming for your job, but someone using AI will. And
Right.
100%, that is full stop what's going to happen. I think AI is going to create as many jobs as it destroys. But what I worry about is, unless you're a tradesperson, a plumber, a mason, unless you have a job like that, every job from sales to marketing to finance to whatever is already being disrupted from AI. And these LLMs, large language models, are getting better and better every single day. And what's possible with them is incredible. I mean, you think about it like this, like I have a meeting now and I'm able to have an AI dispatch action items to people. I'm able to have an AI follow up with what someone was excited about or not excited about. I'm able to take a video clip and have it automatically find specific things based on that without me even having to tell it what to do, right? So this is where like we're going from like asking AIs for things to the next step is autonomous agents, which I'm already doing a bunch with, where you've got things that are like automated and in spitting out processes, Baby AGI or Auto GPT or Cognisys or whatever. There's a lot of them out there. But they're really they're like infants right now, right? 6 months from now, when this episode finally airs or whenever it is, like the tech is going to be that much better, to the fact where we're all going to have our own little Jarvis, and by Jarvis, I mean like the Iron Man's
Tony,
AI. Yeah. Or our own C3POs or our R2D2s and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's where the world's going. I'm excited about it. You can hear the passion in my voice, hopefully, but yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun stuff happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, one of my big problems with Google, like you said, is people don't have to retain information anymore.
Yeah.
Used to, it was a pain in the butt to learn something new. So when you learned it, you had to retain it.
Yeah.
And now
I'm going through that. I mean, I'm feeling that right now, to be honest. I don't know if it's age or not sleeping as much as I should be because I'm a dad or whatever it is, but like I find that right now, like my ability to, not that anybody is good at multitasking, that's a fallacy, right? But
right.
I feel like my cognitive capability is not the same, because now, like a perfect example is the other day I had like a spreadsheet problem to solve. That spreadsheet problem would have taken me like a couple hours of analysis and manipulating the stuff. I was done in like 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Wow.
Because I basically was like, all right, I want this to do this and do this. And what I'm also doing too is I'm using voice. So I've got like a microphone. I speak in the microphone. It uses this thing called Whisper. Whisper translates the audio into words. The words go to the large language model. The large language model does what I want it to do. And it's like, slice this data, dice this data, intersect it this way. Like, I mean, the amount of stuff you can automate now is crazy.
Yeah.
And like, that's just basic tools, right? Like that's not even that's a little bit of Python and some APIs. Like, nowadays, like half the shit I'm talking about, you can do yourself on Zapier or one of these easy tools with a couple of clicks, right? In the future, you're not going to need to sit there and hire a bunch of coders to code something for you. You're going to be like, I think I want this to do this, and then that, and then this, and then that, and then magic. We've gone there. But what happens if we don't teach our children logic? What happens if we don't teach our children how to learn and unlearn? What happens if society just starts acting like Wall-E, right? Or like where everything's just like, oh, I'm just sitting there and it's all coming to me, right? That's the stuff that gets me kind of like a little bit sci-fi dystopian. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. Totally agree, man. Well, this hour has gone really, really fast, Pete. And again, I thank you so much for joining us. Real quick, go ahead and throw out your links and your socials. Tell people how they can get a hold of you and what you can do for them.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'm not here to sell you anything, right? So what I would say is I would love it. I've got a free newsletter I put out. It's petesena.com, and there's a subscribe button on the top. If you want to jump on my newsletter, sign up. When you get my newsletter from me, if you reply to that email, I get that email. So when you get my newsletter, if you sign up, reply to one of those newsletters and just ask me a question. Tell me what you're thinking about, what business you're building, maybe where you're in life in terms of looking at yourself as creative or not creative. And, I'll send you something, or I'll have one of my assistants send you something. It's a shared inbox, and I'm here to connect with people. I'm basically Pete Sena on pretty much every channel, petesena.com, Pete Sena on LinkedIn, Twitter. I feel like every social channel. And now we got, let's see if Threads makes it, maybe from Mark Zuckerberg's newest thing, but yeah, I can't keep up. But needless to say, it's been great spending the time with you. Again, thank you so much for your service. I think that I'm a big believer in leadership, military, and just the importance of military. One of my proudest moments was when I replaced myself with a president, and he's a Navy guy. Don't hold that against him. I can see you're an Army guy, it looks like, but yeah, don't hold that against them. But yeah, I think that like one of the smartest things I believe that entrepreneurs can do is to partner with and to hire veterans, because there's no higher purpose or higher form of leadership in this country, in the workforce, than people who have been in the military, in my opinion. And a fun fact I'll say in closing, I wanted to join the Corps right out of college. I took all the tests, got all the stuff, and my father basically told me he would disown me if I was in the Marines. Now, I learned years later it was because he was scared. He was scared that I was going to go off to war, and get killed and that sort of thing. And I think that his intention was right. But yeah, I'm a little bit envious, because I definitely wanted to join the military right out of school. I feel like I could have done some interesting stuff with it, but needless to say, we're here now, and I'm grateful for the people who have, put their hearts, minds, and asses on the line for this country. So thank you so much.
I appreciate your kind words. And to that, I would say, if you would join the Corps, you wouldn't have been near as smart as you are now, because joining the Corps automatically drops your IQ by 100 points. Just by joining, and you take like a 10, 15 IQ point hit just off thinking about it. So count yourself lucky.
Wow. Is that true, or you just Josh?
No, I'm totally making that up.
Okay. I was like, okay.
Marines are stupid. Anyway, no, I'm just making jokes. Some of my best friends are Marines. But no, man, you wouldn't have been changing the lives you're changing right now, or at least it would have taken you a lot longer to get there. So yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate it. And as always, I'm going to have links to all of Pete's stuff in the show notes and in the bios. So make sure you scroll down, click on him, give him tons of love, hop on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever, and show him some love and support there as well. Once you're done on there, head over to Renowned Leadership, give me some love. Make sure you like, comment, review, 5-star, thumbs up, whatever platform you're on, you know the deal. Awesome. I always complain. I wish they would just uniform it. So it's just one thing, thumbs up, 5 stars. I don't care. Just make it all the same, please.
Amen.
But anyway, so before I let you go, Pete, every guest gets the final wisdom, to speak the final word of wisdom on my show. So my question is, what advice do you have for people to lead like champions?
The hardest thing to know is thyself. So learn yourself, learn who you are, because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. So if you want to be a champion in anything, you have to start with yourself.
I did not tell him to say that. He said that all on his own. He didn't know I was going to ask that question. So don't accuse me of cheating, because I say that all the time.
No, nice. I
You
didn't
can't
know
lead
that.
anyone. You can't lead anyone until you can lead yourself.
Amen.
So my audience is probably really tired of hearing it from me. So it's funny. I love the fact that you said
Good advice.
So, all right, Pete, I appreciate your time, man. We got to bounce. He is Pete Sena. Make sure you go give him tons of love, everybody. I am Stephen Morris, your amazing host, and this is the Renowned Leadership Podcast. We will see y'all next week, and in the meantime, lead like a champion. Bye, everybody.
I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
That's going to wrap up for this episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I hope y'all really enjoyed it. Bonus episode, actually. I hope y'all enjoyed listening to Pete, and I hope you got some knowledge, some wisdom from him. The dude, like I said, the dude's a genius, and so I am so humbled and honored to have him on my show. Make sure y'all go to petesena.com and sign up for his free newsletter. Follow his instructions at the very end to do that. And I can only imagine it's going to bless your life having someone like him talk to you on a regular basis. So, yeah, make sure you get that done. Once you're done doing that, head to renownedleadership.com. Check me out. Click the book a call and come hang out with me for an hour and talk to me about what you got going on. If maybe you need a listening ear or some serious advice, it's absolutely free. Come check that out. And I will see you all for another bonus episode coming up on November 11th, Veterans Day. I got an amazing Marine of all things to come talk to us on a very special day for me. So with all that being said, I'm going to bounce. I will see you all soon. And always remember, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.